Okay, my guest today is Crystal Lindsey. I don't know where to start. We met in Portland, Crystal, about, God, it's so hard to tell now, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
I think it was 2015, so it's been about 6 years.
About 6 years. Okay, yeah. There went 6 years. And it was a classic, I'll never forget it because it was a classic Portland day. It was winter day, all right? It was gray outside. It was pouring like crazy. And I was renting space in a building I think it's called Big Pink. It's the tallest building in Portland. And I was working up there and all the power went out. Power went out everywhere except the elevator, which was nice. I guess they have backup for that. And so I went down to the lobby just to see what was going on and maybe see if there was any power down there. And there she was. I think we were the only two people down there. So, I struck up a conversation with Crystal and bam, there it was. I said, there's something going on here that we need to get to know about. And so we've been friends now for about 6 years. I'm just blown away with what Crystal has done in her life, what she continues to do. And, this is the theme of my program, people that have inspired me on my Siddhartha's journey, on my journey of life since I was about 17, and there have been so many people. And Crystal, you are definitely one of them. So thank you very much for coming out today and visiting with us. So I just want to start with a synopsis from Crystal's new book, which we're going to get into here in a minute. And this is a synopsis from Amazon that Amazon wrote. And let's just start right there. Crystal could have died 1,000 horrible deaths leading up to the night her mother tried to murder her. She was 11 years old when her schizophrenic, bipolar, drug-addicted mom attempted to kill her with an ice pick handle and then disappeared with everything Crystal owned. Shortly after that, Crystal's maternal grandmother informed her that she was disowned from the family. She didn't know her biological father's identity, where he was, and her sister had run away. Let's just take a break for a second. After I read that, I just wanted to breathe for a minute. It's like, when you think you have stuff going on, and we all have stuff going on in our life, we're at different levels and everything. But that one made me just want to stop for a minute, just go, whoa, hang on.
Yeah.
So, with all that going on, eventually Crystal graduated summa cum laude with 2 master's degrees. She went on to become a graduate professor, teaching at the graduate and undergraduate level, became a Fortune 500 motivational, and I say inspirational speaker, an entrepreneur, creating her own social media company. She served 6 years as an education employment specialist for 18 to 24-year-old former foster youth. She has recently authored her new book called Grit and Gratitude, and she's the co-founder of the nonprofit organization, The Foster. Crystal has dedicated her life to helping others navigate and overcome the challenges associated growing up in foster care. So, when I met you, you were in business, and now I forgot, I want to regress a little bit and go back to that story. So here's what happened in that conversation. Many things happened, but Crystal asked me about the office space I was renting. I said, well, this is, let's do a commercial for Regis. Regis, they rent offices international, they're all over the world, and I think there were 13 offices in Portland, and you could go back and forth. So I rent some space. And I was telling Crystal about it. She said, wow, do they have any offices in Rio de Janeiro, right? And in Portland. I said, well, yeah. She says, wow, let me get up there. And she went up there and literally rented some space in Rio de Janeiro because she was on her way there. And I think you even got some space for when you got back in Portland. And I thought to myself, whoa, hang on a second. This woman is going someplace. And I was impressed immediately by how you get things done and your enthusiasm and just that straight ahead focus. So again, that's why I want to have you on the program. And so, many of these things came out years later after I got to know you. In fact, the book and your story, I found out about less than a year ago when I watched something that you had posted on Facebook, and I never knew that story. And, I was just on the tail end of some stuff that happened in our family that was just incredible. So it gave me some comfort to know that. But most of all, what it did is it let me see that other side of you, which now you've dedicated your life to, which I'm inspired even more. As a businesswoman, you just knocked it out of the park. And now you're dedicating yourself to serving foster kids. So it's totally awesome. So, I was thinking yesterday about this first question. There you are, 11 years old, and all these things are happening. What happened? Was there a mentor, a teacher, an event, something that happened along those lines at that age or in that period when all this happened, where you decided, I've got to change direction. I've got to do something with myself. How can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think the answer comes even by backing up a little bit further. So I'll kind of back it up and into that question. But my story, like you said, starts from being born to a mother who didn't love me. She already had 2 kids by 2 other women, was living on welfare, or 2 other men, excuse me, living on welfare. And I was supposed to be a boy, and I popped out a girl. And so my whole life, she told me she knew I was a girl, she would have aborted me, and I'd never be nothing. And what do I think I am? Special, and I'll never be special. And she just took every chance she could to undercut me. And so I remember as a small child, though, that I knew I was different. As the outsider in that family, my mother cuddled my middle sister, braided her hair, sang to her, told her she loved her, all those motherly things. But I never once remember my mother hugging me. I never once remember my mother saying she loved me. And so I was very much on the outside looking in that relationship. And that was the greatest gift I ever got, because I knew I was different. I was separate. And so through that experience, one day my mom picked me up from school, and she was crying and driving sporadically, and it was pretty scary, actually. And she pulled over on the side of the road, and she whipped her head around, and she looked at me, and she said, "Your dad is not your dad. Your mom is not your sister's not your sister. Your aunt's not your aunt. Your dad doesn't love you. You're nothing. You'll never be anything." And so I remember I was like, okay, all right. And so I remember going home and laying on my bunk bed and thinking about it. And I just remember always being an optimist. And I remember in that moment, and I couldn't have been older than 8 or 9, thinking, all right, it's true. I am different. I always knew I was different, but now I know I'm different. My dad must be an alien, because I have superpowers. So you use this mystical thinking, apparently. There's real science behind it, I've learned now, between 7 to 13 to create myths and fairies and leprechauns to define how your life happens. And for me, my father must have been from outer space. And so through that experience, it never got better. Our house burned down twice. It was very traumatic. We begged in front of stores. We were homeless. We dumpster dove, slept in cars, bathed in bathrooms at gas stations. It was the gritty life, right? And so through this, I ended up facing off with my mom. I let someone trim my bangs, and she attacked me. All of this goes down. I end up running away. She'd ripped off my shirt, and I had no shoes on. So here I am in just some shorts at 11 years old, no training bra or nothing, just running down the street, screaming her boyfriend's name, saying he's going to get me because she was going to sick him on me. And I went into foster care like this. And in the middle of the night, she took everything I owned. And so I didn't know that. And I was at the shelter, and I remember they sat me down, and they, it's like an intervention. It was around, 7 chairs of adults. I'm 11. And they were trying to get this out. They couldn't say that my mother had left me. And so I remember sitting there, and I'm like, I've been 6 foot since I was 12. So I was like, I'm a big girl. You can tell me this. What is it? What's going on? And one couldn't say it, and the other tried and couldn't say it, and the other one couldn't say it. And finally one blurted out, "Your mom moved, and we don't know where she went." I said, "What are you talking about? I know where she lives. I want to go down there right now." So they took me to the apartment. I always remember it. I remember looking in the little window at 11 years old and not seeing a stitch of clothes, not a book, not a piece of furniture. I mean, she moved and cleaned that place out. And so I remember going back to the shelter and laying in my bunk bed. And I remember laying there like, all right, okay, And my 11-year-old brain was trying to grapple with this concept. And like you said earlier, I didn't know who my father was. My sisters had ran away. I didn't have nothing. And I literally not a stitch of clothes. She took my bag, she took my books, she took my toys, she took my bike, she took everything. And so I just was grappling with this. And I remember telling myself, laying in that bunk bed, this can be the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Oh, wow.
If I let it. And so I remember that. And I remember breathing into it. I remember crying a little, sure. But I also remember laughing, like, I can turn this into something great. This could be the best thing that ever happened to me. And so because I believed it was the best thing that ever happened to me, it became the catalyst of my life. So I really believe now that we create narratives and story around trauma when it happens. And as somebody once told me, our mind is like a library. And what happens is when trauma happens, books fall to the ground on a certain page and our lives happen, right? And life doesn't stop for anybody. And so you're going around and you don't have time to clean your library and you're tripping over these books on the same page, on the same trauma, and it triggers that same event. And you don't even realize it. For me, it was dating and a guy would say something and then storm out of the room. And I was a wreck because I felt abandoned all over again. And so it was that trauma. So through this process, though, I've learned through self-care, and that's what my book is about. I call them biohacks, but truly at the essence is science-based self-care. But through self-care, I've learned how to honor that part of me for that trauma and how that part of me was stronger and prepared me for who I am today, and see the strength in what happened and see the strength in who I am today because of it. And because I redefine it as a positive event in my life and I see how it helped me, I can now close that book and put it back in the library and no longer trip over those pages. So it's a lifetime journey, but that's really, what happened to me. I haven't had a mentor in my life. I really was all alone. 10 days before my high school graduation, I had a good foster mom and she died. And then it was a whole nother trauma. I went into homelessness and went to college to keep a roof over my head. And, the story goes on and on and on. And I've been on the bottom rung of society for 20 years. And thank God I am finally not struggling. But it's been a really hard road to get here. But I had to trust that no matter what happened, every single thing that happened to me was a gift. And I was right where I needed to be, and everything was working out for me. And I had to trust that even when it felt like my life was imploding, I had to trust I was right where I needed to be. So I can see how I trusted I was right where I needed to be when I was 8 or 9 and my mom told me my father wasn't my father. I can see how I trusted I was right where I needed to be when I was 11 and they told me my mother left. I can see I was right where I needed to be when I faced 3 restraining orders. I can see where I was right where I needed to be when I almost died. I can see through this my life, these terrible things have happened to me, but I trust I'm right where I need to be. And that really has been my secret sauce, other than the daily rituals I put in place.
Wow. Yeah, wow. And the fact that you're 11 years old and coming to this realization, it's just mind-boggling. But like you said, there's that window when we're kids where our imagination is at its height, and we can imagine our way into or out of anything. So it's just amazing. So that sort of leads right into my second question. With everything that you've done and been through, what is it that you want to portray to the world? What's the purpose of your work and your theme? And it sounds like it's just to pass that on, especially to younger people, especially to foster kids.
Yeah, well, and I'll back into that question and then hit you with the answer. I was once told, I did later find my father. The state found my father, and we're reunited. And he was a drug addict and a biker and 6'8". They call him an intimidator. But now he's this incredible man of God, and he runs Habitat for Humanity, an entrepreneur. He's just an incredible human. And through that experience, I met his stepmother, who became a mentor to me in many ways in my adulthood, who was my grandma, may she rest in peace. And my grandma, while she had terrible advice, I could call her for anything. And she told me, she said, you need to stop wearing foster care like a badge of honor. You make people uncomfortable when you talk about your childhood and what you went through. And this came off of the heels of I was dating a very affluent man. We had been drinking into the evenings. I had mentioned that I could spot a drug addict because I was raised around them. He asked the right questions, and I revealed that my parents were, heroin addicts. And he kicked me out of his house in the middle of the night. And so I cried to my grandma, and she said it was my own fault and I need to stop talking about it because it makes people feel uncomfortable. And so at that point, I shut up and I never mentioned it again. And I committed to myself that I would go to my grave and never talk about this and quit wearing foster care like a badge of honor. Now, fast forward through this experience. In 2017, I almost died of an ectopic pregnancy that had erupted, an undiagnosed ectopic. And I lost 2/3 of my blood into my stomach. I had 21 failed IV attempts, no blood pressure, no pulse. And they're shaking me by my heels to get my blood going so they can get an IV, and they saved my life. Through this experience, I had to learn to walk again. I had 5 days in the hospital. I couldn't even get out of the bathroom or get out of bed to go to the bathroom by myself. I really, really was out. And so as a person who took care of myself and relied on myself, you can imagine how scary that was. And now I want you to know, when I woke up though, I had one message that just resounded in my head again and again and again. And it was, you cannot die with your song unsung. You cannot die with your song unsung. You cannot die with your song unsung. And it just 100 times a minute, it just would not stop. And so I took that, whether you believe in source, God, Buddha, Jesus, whatever, I believe very strongly that I am here for a reason, because I cannot die with my song unsung. And so I really, I get goosebumps still just talking about this, but I committed in that moment to start writing my book. And so I did 20 minutes a day and started writing. Now, through that process though, I didn't really know my message. Okay. All I knew is my whole life, people ask me, how did you do it? How did you break all the odds? The statistics show that 50% of foster youth are homeless between 18 to 24. 66% of the women are coming out of the foster care system, become dependent upon the welfare system. About 60% of the men coming out of the the foster care system become dependent on the criminal justice system. And so how did I break this? How did I break this cycle of poverty that had riddled my family for generations? And I would say, I don't know, I worked real hard. I did. I worked 2 to 3 jobs, $680 a month. I put myself through college, first in my family to go to school, and went on, like you said, to get 2 master's degrees and launch a nonprofit and write a book. So how did I do it? I worked really hard. But this book forced me to get down to my practice. And one of the things I was doing that I didn't realize was the catalyst of my whole life was, for decades, the first thing I do when I wake up is I put my shoes on and I went for a walk. And I would walk for sunrise, I'd walk in the dark, I'd walk in the day, but I would take that moment, what I call a gratitude walk. And Tony Robbins talks a lot about your hour of power. It's kind of based on that now. But I did this for years before I met that. And that was really my saving grace. And so when you ask me, what is my message? What is it that I want to get out there? The main thing I want people to understand, and this I want to say to the nation, is that when you are stressed, overwhelmed, burnt out, angry, irritated, you can't forgive someone, filled with hatred, revenge, jealousy, all of this negative emotions, it is a biological problem. And it requires a biological solution. And so what people think is, I just need to snap out of it. I just need to think more positive. I just need to feel better. And then they don't. And why don't they? Because they didn't take the biological steps to solve a biological problem, and they're trying to think their way out of it. You can't think your way out of it, especially if you've experienced childhood trauma. Now more than ever, Nadine Burke, who's a Surgeon General of California, actually found research that shows through adverse childhood experiences are not only linked to mental health, but they also cause you more likely to die of heart disease, lung disease, liver cancer, and of course, suicide and mental illness, and more likely to become a drug addict and everything else under the sun. But there's real, like liver, kidney, heart, you don't think that that's related to childhood trauma, but there's real research now that shows that childhood trauma causes it rewires the way your brain is firing, and it causes real physical problems in your body. And so if you answer yes to 6 out of 10 questions on what's called the ACE score, adverse childhood experience, if you answer yes to 6 out of 10, you are on track to die 20 years younger. And so I want to tell the nation that if you had a traumatic childhood, you cannot think your way out of this. You cannot push your way out of it. You need to take steps every day to put yourself in a peak mental and physical state and reverse the signs of childhood trauma in your life to live a long, healthy life. So that's really my messaging. And again, I have the 10 biohacks in the book on on what I did to put myself in a peak state. But it all comes back to mental and physical fortitude. And again, it's not about positive thinking. It's about what's your daily practice you do no matter what, whether you want to, whether you don't, whether you feel good, whether you feel bad, whether you're in trauma or whether you're not. Whatever's going on in your life, you have to have a daily practice to break a sweat and feel good, or else you'll never live the life you're meant to live. And you're on track to die younger.
Absolutely. And, our last show last week was about this very topic. My guest was Dr. Chris Goodrich, who's the only body-mind doctor in Portland. And we become friends because I believe that. And my story of chronic pain is just, I'm going to do several shows on it. But eventually what it led me to is exactly what you said. You can't solve it. Everything's a symptom. You have to get to the cause of it. And it's the only way you're going to solve anything. All the heavy hitters you mentioned, the cancers and the aches and the pains and the backaches and the migraines, it's all the same source. And it comes from our emotions and emotional trauma that we experience as kids. Yes. Later on, we reenact them through our relationships if they're not healed. So I love that, that you're bringing that up. And I also wanted to touch on what you said about stop telling the story and how important that is, because like attracts like, and you're either on the road to letting that story go and onto the life that you envision for yourself, or you're telling the story, which also holds a vibration. And so every time you tell it, you're revisiting that vibrational place in your life. So absolutely remind myself of this all the time. Stop telling the story. It's done. Every second now.
I couldn't agree more.
Right. Oh, every second is valuable, especially the older you get. Now I want to focus on the vision. What do I want to see? What do I want to create? Who do I want to be? Exactly what you're saying. So I think that's such an important message to kids at any stage of life. Foster, not foster, just focus on what you want. Stop telling the story, especially when it comes to the illness. And that's a tough one because it scares a lot of people. But I think it's the first step. Stop telling the story. Now start dealing with what's going on inside of you. It's all vibration.
And I would even add a miniature step right now. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said, but stop telling the story and then honor how you're stronger now because of it. And then think about what it is you want to accomplish. And once you can do that, for me, my pivotal moment came from when I forgave my mother. I went to a landmark forum. I don't know, if you've heard of that, but it's a process that helps you peel back the onion on the story you tell and how to stop telling that story. But really through that experience, I had to write from my mother's perspective what happened.
Oh, wow.
And that was groundbreaking. And through that experience, even though I had forgave her many years before, it wasn't until I wrote the story from her perspective that I realized it wasn't, at least it wasn't easy. And the nail I had to hang my hat on was my mother never loved me, right? And whether that's a story, okay? Whether or not she ever loved me or not doesn't matter, and I'll never know. But the truth was it wasn't easy for her to leave. It must have been scary. She had to break her lease. She faced child abandonment charges. She had to live small. She changed her name. She couldn't get a job. Her whole life shifted and she ran and had to live small. And when I realized that, I had empathy, and through empathy, I forgave her. And that's one of my biohacks of the book is forgiveness through empathy. But truly, and so if you're out there and you're covered in hatred and the story of life of how everybody has been so bad to you and your mother didn't love you and whatever, okay, I'm here to tell you, sure. The fact is my mother left me. The story I told was my mother left me because I wasn't good enough. Right. My mother left me because she didn't love me. Those are stories. The fact is she left. Now, when I look at that fact from her perspective through empathy, I truly forgave her and everything in my life got better.
Yeah. I love the quote, healing is not a destination, it's a realization. And that is, we're taught to fight the illness, fight the disease, fight the situation. And it's not that. When we can take that perspective like you did of this is a gift. This is showing me something. This is empowering me. And again, to see that at 11 years old is amazing. But anytime we can take it onto that, and we have heroes all over the world with similar stories, that's exactly what they did. They saw the good on it, and they went way, way, way past what's normal. Superhumans. That's how we
Yes, and that is exactly what my book is about. Is I believe not. Yes, the bad news is if you don't deal with it, childhood trauma will lead you to an early grave. Okay, that's the bad news. Okay, the good news though is that one, you have everything within you to be able to turn that around, and it's free. And two, having trauma unlocks superpowers. And I truly believe that I am a more capable, empathetic, driven, focused person who's authentic and genuine and cares deeply for people and pours into them because I went through what I went through. If I was raised to a family with all my capabilities and my height and all of these things, I might have turned out as a snobby little brat. I don't think I would have liked myself if I grew up in an affluent home with no trauma. It took the trauma to humble me day after day after day and year after year and decade to decade of kicking me in the teeth for me to realize that I need to submit to life and I need to trust where I'm at and I need to give back to those around me. And what really matters is to be happy and to focus on love and inspiring love and helping people discover who they are. But I couldn't have discovered that nugget without the trauma. So yes, I believe you unlock superpowers and become superhumans through trauma. And in fact, there's a statistic out there that says 2/3 of the entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, say they found their success because of childhood trauma. So it really, yes, people could take the story and say, my sister, bless her heart, okay, she has lived a very hard life. And oh my goodness. And she blames it all on my mother. Okay. And she was the one who was cuddled and her hair braided and sang to. But she's made up that story that's why her life is that way. I made up my story something different. Mine unlocked superpowers. Hers unlocked a very, very hard life. And so I believe with all of my heart that you can change your story, but either way, it unlocks superpowers when you relax into it, things that people couldn't experience otherwise.
I totally believe that. Absolutely. And I think you covered my next question. What would you say to kids in a similar situation? But you've covered it. Everything you said, I think, applies to kids, adults, entrepreneurs, everybody, turning that adversity around.
If I could sum it up, I would say, trust you are right where you need to be. Even when life kicks you in the teeth, trust you're right where you need to be. And if you can find the belief, even when you're hurting and abandoned and scared and homeless and dumpster diving, whatever that darkness is, if you can trust in that moment you're right where you need to be, you can move through this and turn it into your superpower and live an incredible life.
Yeah, acceptance, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I went to a body-mind doctor in California. He didn't put a hand on me. We sat there for 2 hours. He just said, man, radical acceptance. This is a medical body-mind guy, but the body-mind guys work totally different. Yeah. I was literally sitting on the floor in a meditative, and he was in his chair. He didn't even read the intake. We talked for 2 hours. He goes, radical acceptance. After I told him everything that was going on, it all boiled down to that. So I love that you're affirming that.
Truly.
So
truly.
Whoa, Crystal. Well, my next question is, what do you do to relax? And in the background there, I see your painting. And I just learned this, I think it was yesterday. I was looking at some of your videos and I saw you on there painting. Now, this is a whole new thing. So it sounds like that's what you do to relax and to inspire you. If you'd like to say a few words about that.
Absolutely. For me, I never considered myself an artist. And yet I had a person in my life who painted every day at 3:00 because that's what you do when you're a stay-at-home mom and you're retired. And so that really inspired me. And I ended up living with this woman for a couple of months. And I said, I really want to do these acrylic pours. I've been watching the videos. I really want to do it. And she says, no, it's too messy. And so I honored it. It's her house. I was like, okay, I won't do it. And this was just a couple of years ago, within 2 years. But as soon as I got my own apartment, the first thing I did was I wanted to buy everything to do my acrylic pours. And so you got to get the Floetrol and the paints and the canvases and all this. And I just started, pouring and doing, you slide it around. And there's the beauty of it. And this is really a metaphor for life. Okay. The beauty of acrylic pouring is you really don't have any control. And so we have this illusion of control in our life. We have to believe because we drive on the right side of the road, then we're going to be safe from a head-on collision. We have to trust that. But really, at any time, somebody could drive over there and smash into you, and you did everything right. So that's just one of a million examples that we believe we have control when really we have no control. And so, but without an illusion of control, we can't move forward. So we believe we have control, but when we relax into the fact that you're right where you need to be and that you don't have control, and that just do your best every single day, put yourself in a state and pour into people around you, and that's perfect. Then all of a sudden you can move through that. Now, that's what I do with painting. So I trust that whatever happens on the canvas was meant to be. I relax into the fact that I don't really have any control. I pick the colors, I pick my technique, I pick the size of the canvas. That is my control. But once I start painting and throwing it on there and mixing it around, I couldn't have done this. Look, to me, this is like the Michelangelo where the fingers touch, right here. I couldn't make this happen. Each of these little cells, these happen organically. I didn't paint a single thing on there other than slap it around and slide it, right? So that's the beauty of what I love about acrylic pouring, is that it's a complete release. And it turns out there's real science that when you use the right side of your brain, you unlock all of this. Like, we're so stuck in the left hemisphere, but when we paint and we get creative and we're in nature, and that's what one of the biohacks of the book is, being creative and being in nature, you unlock this right side of your brain, and you tap into this inner fortitude and strengths and insights that you would never have. So right now I'm going through a very hard thing, and very, very hard. And within the last 2 weeks, it's been the hardest. And I mean, that's saying something. It's been the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life. And talk about being kicked in the teeth and knocked down, and my whole life implode in front of me. And I just have to figure it out. And so anyways, I hadn't painted in 2 months. And just last night, I went down there and I started painting. I said, just paint one thing. I ended up painting like 13 canvases. I was down there way past my bedtime, fast 2 hours. I got paint in my hair, paint all over me. And I was like, I have to do a live. I'm loving this so much. But I felt this release, this break off of all this negativity. I felt like I ran a marathon, or I graduated from college, or it was this euphoria you can't even explain that you experience when you lose track of time and you let go. And so for me, I do meditate every single day. That's another way I relax. Several times a day I meditate. And then I also paint every chance I get. And now the painting has become a fundraiser for my nonprofit. Oh, wow. So this is a 3x4 foot painting. I would sell that for about $300. And then I do 16 by 20 inches that are pretty good size. Those are about $60. And then I have like $40s and $20. And then I even do little $5 or 2 for $8. And I all of this, I go to these trade shows and artisan markets, and I sell my art. And I've actually got a little reputation locally. And I got some commissioned work in businesses. And all of this goes to buying gifts for foster youth on their birthday, to let them know they matter. So it's kind of fun to have something that lets me unwind and give back.
Awesome. Well, we're running out of time here. So just real briefly, if you could just hold up the book, let us see the book again, tell people where they can get the book. Definitely get this book, Grit and Gratitude. I know I've seen it on Amazon. Get the book. Tell us a little bit about the nonprofit organization, how it's going, what are you doing?
Absolutely. Well, can I take a story real quick? Look. Yeah. Hold on. This right here is for social. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. No. So speaking of that, I'm going to post that on the Fostered's website. So thefostered.org is my nonprofit, thefostered.org. So like foster care, fostered, past tense, with the ED at the end, fostered. So The Fostered is designed to help foster youth know they matter. I had a lot of dark times in my life because people forgot my birthday, and I didn't have family around me, and I didn't have people that cared about me or knew me. And I would go to work and come home, and it was like another day. Nobody even got me a cake. Nobody even, told me happy birthday. And when you're really going through stuff and somebody forgets your birthday, that's like the lowest low, I mean, you need a reason to feel bad when you're in a bad mood. There you go. It's like, nobody even gives a crap about me. It can even lead to suicidal thoughts, honestly. You start wondering, like, why am I even here? What's my life worth? Would they even notice if I was gone? Nobody even cares about all this negative. They call them automatic negative thoughts. Ants go through your head. And so for me, I had several birthdays that were forgotten. But I also had an experience when I was in foster care where I got an art set. And in this art set, they gave me, pens and pencils and stuff, and a little wooden box, and it opens and it has a little clasp. And I remember thinking, like, somebody cares. Somebody cares about me. I matter. And so I kind of merged those two together, and it came through the form of an angel tree at my church. And I ended up sponsoring 6 youth, and you get them these presents and you give them. I had so much fun doing these gifts. I prayed over them every day. I drank my coffee looking at them. I wrapped them. I blessed these children. I had their first name and their last initial, and I would say their name every day. And through this experience, I just became so blessed myself that I wanted to keep it up. And so the Fostered was born. And so this is our 20th month in a row of buying 3 gifts for foster youth on their birthday. And each gift is $75. So you can get a lot on Amazon for $75. And so we pour into them with things that inspire self-sufficiency or independent living, and write them notes and let them know they matter in this world.
And how can people contribute to the nonprofit? Do you have a website?
Yeah, well, thefostered.org. Please go and make a donation. If you do make a donation, I'm going to probably send you a painting. So if you want to purchase a painting, I can do custom work. Send me a picture of something that inspires you. I had one guy say, I'm not going to send you a photo, but how about I just give you words? Creativity, innovation, and education. Paint that, the convergence of those. I'm like, okay. So like whatever it is that inspires you, I would love to bless you with a painting, and that hopefully can embody and then beautify your life and signal to you that you're made a difference in the lives of foster youth. Every single dollar goes to gifts. There is no overhead. I buy all the art supplies out of my pocket. I don't get paid a dime. Nobody gets paid. It is literally an act of love and service to give back. So I would love for a donation at thefostered.org. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fostered, Instagram at The Fostered. Who knows? I might even make a TikTok, but get connected with us. And I'm really pouring my heart out and my story, and hope to inspire those around me to live the best life they can through daily rituals of exercise, meditation, and pouring into those around them.
Well, I encourage you to stay in touch with Crystal. There it is. What can I say? We're talking about Crystal Lindsey here. It's just amazing. And thanks for coming on again. I want to leave you all with this quote that I found on your website by an anonymous. Let your dreams be bigger than your fears, your actions louder than your words, and your face stronger than your feelings. And I think you've exemplified all of that in a major, major way. I so appreciate you being on. And let's do another one. This might turn into a series. Several guests. We just can't stop. I'm going to be creating series with several guests. You'll definitely be one that I would like to continue talking to, telling these amazing stories and inspiring people.
Thank you. And I would welcome that opportunity. And Mr. Don Rockland, I want you to know that you matter in this world, and what you're doing is making a difference. So I would like to turn the tables to you and just pour out gratitude and abundance of blessings onto you and this broadcast, and anybody watching it. May they find peace and know that they matter in this world, just like you should know you matter in this world. You're making a difference. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Okay, we'll see you for our next episode coming up in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much, Crystal. We'll be talking soon. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for joining in, everyone. If you'd like to stay in touch and updated about future programs and events, please check out my website and leave your email address. If you'd like to support this program, my music, workshops, and other events, see the link below and check out the benefits you'll receive by becoming a patron. Meanwhile, I wish you maximum creativity, power, and love. See you next time.